Okay, picture this. You're right in the middle of a totally chaotic work meeting where literally everything is falling apart. Or maybe a tense family dinner where voices are just starting to raise. And while everyone else around you is absolutely losing their minds, you're just sitting there looking like the ultimate picture of peace. People probably tell you all the time, wow, you're so chill, or I wish I had your Zen energy. But internally, oh man, your heart is racing a mile a minute, your stomach is tied in absolute knots, and you feel like you are one tiny minor inconvenience away from a total meltdown. Does that sound familiar?
Well, welcome, focused learners, to today's explainer. If that opening scenario hit a little too close to home, you might actually be living in what psychologists call swan mode. And we're talking about the hidden cost of silent resilience. Honestly, if you've ever watched a real swan on a lake, you know exactly what this vibe is. Above the surface, they are majestic, elegant, not a feather out of place. But below the water, they are paddling with these incredibly awkward, frantic webbed feet just to keep moving. Today, we're going to look through that inner lens to uncover exactly why your brain chose this exhausting performance as a survival strategy. And more importantly, we're going to give you a framework to actually manage it.
So here is our roadmap for today. We've got 1, the swan mode illusion, 2, origins of silent resilience, 3, the human pressure cooker, 4, tutorial, lowering the pressure, and finally 5, finding your anchor friend. Let's dive right in. Section 1, the swan mode illusion. So let's start with our working definition. Swan mode is the state where you appear completely graceful, steady, and totally unbothered on the surface to everyone watching. But underneath, you are paddling frantically just to stay afloat. And if you're doing this right now, I really want to validate your experience. You are not actually at peace. It takes an immense, truly exhausting amount of hidden energy to keep that surface looking so glassy and perfect while you're literally kicking for your life below just to survive your own stress. Now, it's super important to notice the clear distinction here between two very different types of calm. On one side, you have the Zen master. A true Zen master has a high frustration tolerance. They don't suppress their stress, they process it. They look at problems like puzzles to be solved. But then we have the swan. For a swan, calmness isn't real peace. It's actually a highly developed defense mechanism. Think of anime characters like Satoru Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen or Levi Ackerman from Attack on Titan. They always look completely untouchable, right? But that stoicism isn't tranquility. It's an impenetrable shield. A swan isn't calm at all. They are just very, very good at pretending. Which brings us to Section 2, Origins of Silent Resilience. Where does this even come from? Well, this behavior almost always starts in what psychologists call emotionally quiet or neglectful homes. Now, you might not have been in any physical danger growing up, but your brain is incredibly smart. It picked up on subtle cues and learned a really powerful, albeit damaging lesson. Your worth was entirely tied to being low maintenance. You probably became the good kid just to save your caregivers from the discomfort of dealing with a messy, emotional child. And when you're constantly praised for never making a peep, your developing brain hardwires a core belief. Being invisible is safe, and having needs makes you a burden. You learn to paddle silently. Moving on to Section 3, the human pressure cooker. Here's the harsh reality. Being a human pressure cooker is not free. There's a severe internal fallout. First, you run this constant risk of delayed explosions. I mean, you can only suppress so much anxiety for so long, right? Eventually, some tiny, totally unrelated trigger, like, I don't know, just misplacing your keys, causes a massive meltdown that's actually been building up for a decade. It's exactly like Gaara from Naruto. You can only hold so much inside those defenses before the sand inevitably starts to leak out. And then there's the quiet tragedy of emotional numbness. Because here's the catch. You cannot selectively numb emotions. When you push down the scary feelings, the joyful ones get muffled right along with them. You just end up feeling like you're existing, watching your own life endlessly buffer in the background. Okay, Section 4. This is our tutorial, Lowering the Pressure. Let's get into the actionable stuff. So, how do we actually lower this pressure safely? For this masterclass, we're focusing on 3 specific techniques: practicing emotional curiosity, scheduling feeling time, and implementing grounding rituals. Step 1, practice emotional curiosity. I want you to become an emotional scientist. For a swan, your knee-jerk instinct is to instantly shove a feeling down the second it bubbles up. Instead, I want you to get curious about it. When you feel that sudden flicker of irritation or a random wave of sadness, just pause. Ask yourself, where is this coming from? And the true beauty of this step, you don't even have to fix it.
Actually, scratch that. You shouldn't try to fix it right then. You don't act on it. You just acknowledge the data. You're simply observing the emotion under a microscope rather than locking it in a dark box. Step 2 is to deliberately schedule feeling time. Now, I know, scheduling your emotions sounds incredibly clinical and maybe a little weird, but for someone who constantly suppresses, this is an absolute game changer. Give yourself a dedicated 10 minutes a day to just be with your feelings. Use this time to journal, listen to some highly evocative music, or honestly just sit quietly and focus on your breathing. This controlled daily environment acts as a much-needed release valve. It gently lets off a little steam every single day so that pressure doesn't build into some explosive meltdown later. And step 3 is your emergency brake when the internal panic actually starts. This is about implementing grounding rituals. When the internal paddling gets way too loud and you feel yourself starting to dissociate, we use the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. We start with 5. Look around your environment right now and deliberately name 5 things you can see. Focus on their color, their shape, the way the shadows hit them. Really bring your eyes into the room. Next, we move down to 4. Identify 4 things you can physically touch around you. Maybe it's the texture of the desk you're sitting at, the fabric of your own shirt, or the coolness of a glass of water. Actually feel that sensation against your skin. Then 3. Tune into your hearing and note 3 things you can hear. Listen past the immediate silence in the room. Maybe it's the hum of the refrigerator, distant traffic outside your window, or the ticking of a clock. Anchor your ears strictly to the present. Now drop down to 2. Notice 2 things you can smell. This one can be a little trickier, but try to find the scent of your coffee, the laundry detergent on your clothes, or just the crispness of the air. Finally, 1. Focus on one thing you can taste. It could be the lingering mint from your toothpaste, a sip of whatever you're drinking, or a piece of gum. By walking your senses down this ladder, you powerfully, and I mean powerfully, pull your brain out of its internal threat mode and anchor it firmly back into the undeniable safety of the present moment. It works like magic. And finally, Section 5, finding your anchor friend. You absolutely need to find your anchor friend. Listen, as a recovering swan, you do not need to open up to a massive crowd of people. That is way too overwhelming. You just need one. Find one rare, steady friend who makes intentional space for your real, messy self. An anchor friend is incredibly special because they don't try to fix your problems, and they certainly don't hit you with toxic positivity. They are just willing to sit with you in the quiet, allowing you to be seen completely without that pristine facade. Which brings us to the ultimate goal of stepping out of swan mode. Healing from this silent resilience is about fundamentally relearning that your feelings are not the enemy. They never were. They are your compass. They tell you what you value, what hurts, and what you actually need. You are absolutely allowed to not be okay. And I promise you, the world is not going to end if you stop paddling frantically for just a minute, drop that heavy shield, and ask for a little bit of help. So I want to leave you with this question to really ponder today. Are you a recovering swan? Have you recognized this frantic paddling in your own life? I highly encourage you to share your experiences down in the comments, because honestly, naming it is the very first step to changing it. Practice that emotional curiosity, run through your grounding rituals, and start looking for your anchor friend. You do not have to carry all this pressure by yourself. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and please take care of yourself.